Hi, I'm Shane. Thanks for hanging out today. I have for review and sound check a Sonor AQ2 jungle kit. This is the white marine pearl version of this Safari kit, and it's actually a little bit under $800 new. The lacquered ones are over $1,000, so quite a bit more expensive. The sizes are 13 by 16 snare, 10 by 7 rack tom, 13 by 12 floor tom, and 16 by 15 bass drum. I've got Evans calf tone heads on both toms and on the bass drum. On the bottoms, I have the stock coated heads on the toms, just the stock head on the front of the bass drum, Evans UV1 on the top of the snare, and an Evans Hazy on the bottom of the snare. I've got this tuned up pretty high for jazz, with the smaller sizes. Obviously, this kit is going to be right at home in that jazz setting, and you don't actually have to crank it quite as high as you do a normal bop kit, which is bigger, 18, 12, 14, and you can still get that pretty high jazz sound without the drums sounding completely choked. So I'm going to go ahead and play these drums wide open, with no backing track or anything here in the video. And then I'm going to link down below to a short I have to me playing along to a jazz tune so you can hear how they sound with the track. Microphones today are a Earthworks TC20 on the snare, a pair of Earthworks SR25s as overheads, and a Shure Beta 52 on the front of the bass drum, which is pretty typical recording setup for me. The only issue I have with the actual drums is that there's not really a good cross stick sound on the snare drum. It's probably because it's a 13, and that's just what happens with all 13-inch drums. I do appreciate the fact that it's 6 inches deep. Most 13s are 5 or even shallower, so it gives off a nice big full sound, even being a 13. But there's really not a good cross stick, which is kind of important for jazz. I've changed all the heads out. I have Evans G1s on both the toms. I actually kept the stock coated heads on the bottom. I like how those sound with these. And these are tuned as low as I could get them and still, maintain a pretty good tone. The kick, I went with an Aquarian Modern Vintage 2 on the batter. It's a 2-ply head with no muffling. And on the front of the kick, I have just a clear Ambassador with a ported hole, just so I can get my hand inside there, and there's a small towel inside, and it's touching both heads. Also, I've added the Solomon Low Freak, it's kind of a sub-kick mic on the front head, and the Shure Beta 52 is just inside the porthole. Snare, I've tuned down a little bit, and I've changed out the snare wires for some Pure Sound like snare wires, some generics of those. Put a couple crashes on the kit. This is as close as I think as I can get to a rock funk sound with this kit. Surprisingly, it's the 13 that sticks out the most. So I'll go ahead and play this as is. I have also added some tom mics. They're the EV ND408s. So close micing the toms. Same mics for the overhead and the snare. So we'll see how that sounds. I'm going to play just open with nothing, and then I'll play along to a track, and I'll have that linked in the description below. I want to show you the hardware that comes on the kit. Typical floor tom leg from Sonor. They're pretty beefy. Got a nice big rubber foot on the bottom there. That's nice. Same thing on the bass drum spurs. These are the typical gull wing type spurs. Got the same foot on it with the spike coming through the bottom. And there's a memory lock on there. These come obviously out of the entire bass drum. Quite nice. The bass drum riser is actually the best part of the bass drum. So it's there's a floor tom bracket on the bottom of the drum, and this thing kind of just fits in there. You clamp your pedal to the bottom part, and the cool part is it can slide in and out, so you can change your pedal distance to the head. I've had some smaller bass drums where a direct drive pedal will actually hit the bass drum head, and I couldn't use it, so that's really nice. You don't have to rely on an external like Gibraltar platform one, so that is great that they have that. And then we get to the tom holder. Look at this monstrosity. I mean, this thing is, to be honest, it's kind of ridiculous. It weighs way more than the bass drum. I think that this is probably the one that comes on all their drums. So I can see, in a 22-inch bass drum that, this would be great, but it is just ridiculously large compared to the size of the bass drum. It has the tom holder, which is pretty nice. It's got a ball socket, and the hex rod actually slides in and out of the ball, so that is good. Comes with a cymbal holder, and I did use this on the first night I got the kit. I play at the Sweetwater Sound Jazz Jam. I'm like the house drummer there for the jam, so I set up the kit and played it there, and this thing worked fine. I have no complaints. It's pretty solid. It's just the idea of it in that teeny bass drum is kind of bothers me a little bit. It's just giant. So what I did instead was I picked up a Gibraltar replacement. And you can see this is much smaller. I lose the cymbal arm, but that doesn't bother me. I'd rather have my cymbals on a stand anyway. You can get this at Drum Factory Direct. Actually, it's in 2 pieces. I'll send put a link down in the description below. A 1-inch down tube is required there, and you got to get a special ball arm. It's about $50, but that is what I'm going to use primarily on the kit. All the lug casings are die cast. They're super, bulky, and they feel really nice. The suspension system actually doesn't do anything in the rim. It goes through the lug casings. There that is. Very nice. There are no memory locks on the floor tom legs, and there was no memory lock on the original tom mount, so that's a little disappointing, but it's what it is. So there you have it, the Sonor AQ2. It's all maple. Again, it's 13, 10, 13, and 16. A couple things I didn't mention earlier. The bass drum legs, when you put them in, they actually hit, the lugs that are right next to the bass drum. You kind of got to maneuver them around the lugs, which is weird. But I understand they didn't want to, re-engineer bass drum leg holders just for this size drum. They just, used some of the other ones that they had for their bigger drums. Also, when I got the snare out of the box, the strainer wasn't together properly. I had to completely take it apart. There was like a nut that was on the wrong side of a holder, so I had to disassemble that. That's kind of weird, but, once I figured it out, I didn't have any problems. For an all-maple kit for under $800, I think this is a really good deal. The other 2 that are not wrapped, that are lacquered, are like $1,030. I don't think I would spend that much. I think that's a little bit too much for drums this size, but the wrapped one, I'm not sure why there's a $250 difference. That seems, excessive to me, but hey, that's how they're pricing it. So I would kind of categorize this like I do the Yamaha Stage Custom. That one's an all birch shell, and it's, under $700. This is all maple. It's under $800. It's a great mid-range kit. I like the fact that I could later buy the Bop kit, the 18, 12, 14, and have no overlapping drums with the same finish. And then there's a 20, 10, 12, 14, I believe it is. But I don't think there's a full size. There might be a 22 version also. I haven't seen that. But it's nice that you could, build up a shell bank, all the same finish. I love white marine pearl. Ever since I started watching Benny Greb, that's become one of my favorite finishes, and they really do this well. So other than that, it's a good kit. I mean, this is probably the only time I'm going to have it tuned for, rock, funk. I wouldn't play a rock show with, 16-inch bass drum. It's just too small. I have a bunch of other kits that I could use for that. But if this was your only kit, you could probably get away with it. If I was buying only one, I would probably, go a little bit bigger, the 18-inch kick. But I've already got that covered in another set, so I wanted just a smaller set. The heads make a big difference, especially with maple. The heads are, make a giant difference in the sound. You could hear that these G1s let the shells resonate a lot more. The calf tones, it sounds like most of the sound is actually coming from the head, but that's a function of the heads and nothing to do with the drums. So once again, I'm Shane. Thanks for hanging out. If you have any questions about this kit, leave them in the comments down below. I will try to get to all of those. Make sure you check out all my social media sites. I have those linked below. Subscribe and take care.